Okay, so at this point of the unit, you shall have completed all the instructional videos. So the one thing we have left is to complete some practice for the unit, and then I'll explain the lab assignment. Okay, so now what do we have at this point of our level? We have the character that can move and detect the coordinates in all four directions. So now let's finish up the implementation for this character so that for this practice, we can have a character that we can see on third person and that we can move around with the AWSD keys. Okay, so let's start by setting up the character view. So we're gonna go to my character and then we're gonna go to the viewport. Now here we're gonna do those changes that we did in the previous videos to change from first person to third. So actually, I think we had done something like that for our pawn. So look for your pawn, my pawn, right? And over there, remember we did this. We did like a spring arm and camera. So like we can even use this. So I'm gonna just do Control C, copy for both of the items together. And then what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna paste that onto my character. So we're gonna go to viewport and here I'm not gonna need this camera anymore. I'm gonna delete it. Instead, I'm gonna have the camera that we did on my pawn, just paste it over there. Okay. So I think something like that is fine. Maybe we will need to tweak up the angles a little bit, but I think this does the job. And then one more thing that we need to add is a static mesh component because we cannot really see our character here. So we're gonna add here a sphere, and then I'm gonna have this as part of the body of the player, something like this. So in this way, our player can be recognized by the sphere moving around, and it has the camera attached to it in this way. Okay, so let's make sure we have that for our character, compile and save. And I think that should be enough for our character. So if you want to test out that it's working, make sure it is able to jump and it follows the ball in this way. Okay, so now we have completed all the steps to set up the camera view correctly. Now let's finish up the AWSD movement because the last thing we did was recognize the coordinates, but the move hasn't been finalized. So we're gonna go again to my character. Now we're gonna go to the event graph because we are at this point right now. We are able to detect the coordinates with the action X and Y values, but that's not really the whole implementation yet, okay? So to finish up the implementation, let's just take out all these nodes here. They were more for testing purposes. And then here, let's recombine the structure pin. Okay, we're still gonna use X and Y for the move, but in a little bit of a different way. Okay, so what we're gonna do here is that you're gonna drag off the action value pin, and instead of doing the split beforehand, we're gonna do it in this way. We're gonna use a break vector 2D. Basically, in this way, we're just splitting the vector, the two-dimensional vector we're receiving into X and Y. So very, pretty much similar to the split we did before. We're just doing it in a node here. Okay, so, but the logic, it's the same. We're just receiving the move coordinates and showing this as X or Y outputs. Okay, now next, I'm going to add what is called a movement input node. Okay, so I'm gonna go on trigger here and look for one called add movement input. Okay, So this one will be the one that is gonna make our character actually move through an input. As you can see, the target is our pawn, which in other words is our character. And then we're gonna have this add movement input. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is to make sure that the X movement, let's start with the X. Let's make sure that the X movement is triggering correctly to move on that coordinate direction. So we're gonna attach this X to the scale value up here in the add movement input node. How do we know that matches there? Because usually the color matches the what it needs to connect with, right? So that's what we want to attach there for the scale value. But now here we are saying, okay, move on X through this movement input, but we haven't really said to which direction. We're gonna add one more input here. It's gonna be called get actor right vector. You're gonna type it like this, get actor right vector. Okay. So what is this node doing here? This node gets me basically the current direction of our character. So when I'm saying get actor right vector, I'm basically, as you can see the description there, it's getting my right vector from the actor at that current moment. Why do I need that? Because I'm just gonna be moving my vector in the x. So basically, with complementing with this other coordinate, I can make sure that that movement is being done in the correct direction, okay? So basically, this is forcing the movement, this is forcing the direction. So with both movement and direction, then our character can do successfully the move where it's supposed to do it. Okay, so this one is gonna get my actor direction. I'm gonna connect it with the world direction. Okay, so as you can see in this way, uh, my actor should be moving correctly in this x coordinate. So now we're just missing the second for the y. I was thinking of testing and making sure it works first. So compile, save, and then run it. And then you should be able to move in the AD keys. Okay, we haven't done the WS, but we'll get there soon enough. Okay, so this, as you can see, these two already do the job for the X. Now let's do the job for the Y. So for this Y, as you can see, there is not like a scale value available here to connect to, which is gonna force us to create a second add movement input node here so that we can have like more space to connect. Okay, so add movement input here. Okay, and now I'm gonna make sure that I connect. Let me just organize this a little bit more. I'm gonna just put this here. I'm going to connect the second scale value that I have available here with my Y. Okay. So in this way, both of them are working simultaneously. It's just that it's being a succession of events. This one happens at the same time, this one will happen right after. So one is receiving X, one is receiving Y, but same thing here. We need to say the world direction to specify the correct direction this movement will be applied to. And now, similar to how we did before here, we got the right vector for the X. Now, let's get the forward vector for the Y. So we're gonna look for one called get actor forward vector, this one. And this one we are gonna connect with the world direction. Okay, so now this one, as you can see, why is it forward for this one? Because Y, remember, moves W and S front and back, and then X gets D and A, right or left. That's why we're getting actor right for that one. So in this way, that's why we need actor right for the X and then actor forward for the Y. Okay, just hopefully that makes sense as to why we're connecting these nodes here. Okay, so now with this implementation, I think now the AWSD should work. Let's test it out. And in fact, it does work now with the whole implementation, okay? So now that should be until this point right here is what I want you to submit for the practice. So if you go here, I'm gonna request you to submit the practice of the day. Basically, that's what I want. I want the camera in a third person view where we can see the ball in this way. And then that ball is able to jump and move in the AWSD directions, which is pretty much what I have here. I have the movement in AWSD directions, jump, and the camera view. Okay, so until this point, save, export the zip file, and submit for the practice. Now, talking a little bit about the lab, for the lab of today, let me open it up. Basically, you're gonna follow similar steps of what we learned today for inputs and players. But these are the following requirements. You're gonna open up the previous lab assignment, the blueprints one. I think at that point we had like a level with like a house, blueprints implemented, some objects along the way. That is fine. Uh, but now what I want you to do is that for that level, remember we still had the default empty pond character, like the invisible one that kind of flies around. So we're gonna change that. We're gonna now create a character over there that has the third person camera view. So basically create a character with the camera, same way we practice in these videos, so that you are able to jump when the spacebar is pressed and when you move in the WSD. Okay, so basically these three steps are replicating all the steps we did to get to this point of the practice. You will need to implement all the different things we learned, such as like input modifiers, input mapping context, and so on. Okay, so these are gonna take you some time to complete, but that will be most of the work right there. Then finally, when you have the character moving around correctly, I want you to create 10 different platforms across the level. You can creatively decide where to put them or how to set it up. And then I apply materials to all of these. So what do I mean by these 10 different platforms? I want you to create some sort of platforming in the game, in the level. Uh, if you're not experienced with like platforming games, basically you just need to create uh, spaces in the map for the object to move around. Basically, let's say this is my level right here and I want to create some platforms. I can create a cube here and scale it a little bit so that it's more of like a surface, something like this. I'm gonna make it a little bigger. Okay, so once you have this created, I'm just gonna go ahead and Control D, duplicate it, put some more in the level. As you can see, once you create these platforms, you can do like some sort of level where the character has to move around jumping on those platforms. So if I create this, you see now, you see I can kind of move and jump on top of these platforms. And then in that way, it's more up to you what you want to do with them. Like here, I'm just showing you the example. Okay, create them, and then the character can like jump and move on them. But up to you. You can create something kind of like Mario Bros. Style where you just keep going forward, jumping on platforms until you get to the end. Uh, that is for you to creatively uh, do. But what is the only requirement that you at least 10 different ones on that level? after the character has been created, and then put proper materials to everything. So as long as you meet these requirements, you get the grade, but you can use your creativity to do something a little bit more interesting with it. Okay. So hopefully with these videos, the lab assignment is clear what to do with it. And hopefully with this video also the practice is clear what you want, what you need to submit. Okay. So hopefully you learn a lot with this players and input unit. I'll see you on the next video.